okay, just to remind me of some things that are really important in relationships, that are really key, okay? So the most key thing is that all of us want to love and be loved. And actually we want to give love as much as we want to receive it. And we may not feel like that. Sometimes we might feel so exhausted and we just think, oh, I just wish the world would, you know. Okay, but really, deep inside, deep in our souls, we want to be loving. And we want to receive love. And this process of mindfulness, okay, and of learning to have the courage to see ourselves completely, right, is a journey towards love. So mindfulness is really about, we live here in our busy mind, okay, most of the time. We feel caught up in our thinking, the head's going zing, 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 the body's tense, right? We're caught up in life, completely engaged. There's no downtime, okay? Even when we go on holidays or we go to the beach, we're still zing, 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 right? It's rare. It might be in moments when we're perhaps doing a sport or just catching a sunset or patting our dog or looking into a child's eyes, or, okay, where we have glimpses of just of the whole, of out of this space of busyness. So mindfulness is about sinking out of this busy mind. And as part of the mind, we're caught here in an ego identity, okay? And it's learning to sink down more into, really, into our hearts or into our soul, okay? And it brings much more peace, much more love, much less fear, in fact. So Albert Einstein, who was a very conscious being, he has a quote, and it's, "The intuitive mind, which is the whole mind, the whole sort of body mind, is a sacred gift. The thinking mind, the rational mind here, is a useful servant. We live in a society that honours the servant and has forgotten the gift." Okay, the whole space. So in healing, it really is about learning to move from this place of mind-ego identity much more into our hearts. Because here we're caught up in defending this identity. We think we should be skinny and intelligent and look the right way and do everything right socially and have enough money and be very good all the time and, you know, be adequate in every way, okay? When we're caught here. When we're in our hearts, there's much more authenticity. There's much more preparedness just to be who we are. Embracing the darkness, embracing the light. Okay? We are all of that. And we need to treat that with forgiveness in ourselves, and then we will learn to treat others with forgiveness as well. But it starts with this. It starts with loving this. Even with all of the rubbish that we've got. Okay? And all of us have. So, and in that process of moving from head, because when we're in our heads, we're so determined to be enough in every way, right? We want to be good enough. We want to be socially acceptable, okay? We want to be, and because all of us, every single human, and everyone that's walked through my door, and you know, I recently had an experience that taught me that there was still a bit of this in me as well. I might tell you that at the end, but you know, every single one of us has some sort of fear, though we don't choose to see it, but some sort of fear as to whether we are enough. It might be in our workplaces, it might be socially, it might be whether we're good enough in some other way, okay? All of us, whether we're good enough for our partners, whether we might be abandoned, okay? We all have some sort of fear. And that's because we're caught here. And so when you're moving into this place of acceptance of the whole and learning to live from more that intuitive space, you're far more accepting of self. And fear starts to disappear. And I can honestly say, you know, I've been on this journey for, well, a long time. But really, I've really worked on being more authentic, being true to myself, working on mindfulness for probably 6 or 7 years. And I'm a much more loving being, okay? And I can love humans that don't love me. And that's a real... Yeah, I'm still not perfect at it. I'm not saying I'm perfect, right? I do sometimes when someone gets angry or grumpy, or, you know, the defensiveness will come up, and okay, but, you know, sometimes as a therapist, you do see people that are very caught in their own fear and inadequacy, and they can sometimes be quite prickly and quite attacking, okay? And I'm so much better than I once was at just seeing it. Okay, they're scared. Doesn't matter what they're saying to me, I can still love them, right? Because I'm not coming from here, I'm not needing to defend an identity as much. It's not that I'm not firm, you know, sometimes we need to be firm. I'm not saying that there isn't reason to stand up for ourselves and be firm in life. There often is, and even to leave relationships if they're not good, okay? But it's this ability to see other humans with compassion because we're learning to see ourselves with compassion. We're forgiving ourselves all the shit, right? So one of the key things that mindfulness, I guess, rests on is that we see life rather than a series of obstacles, or rather than a series of, oh, why is this happening to me, or, you know, what's happening next, or, you know, of seeing something and hating it, or even being on a busy road in busy traffic and thinking, oh, why is this happening, or resisting the computer breaking down, or even much bigger things, even something as huge as losing someone we love, okay? If we are in what I call resistance, so we're not accepting it, we're pushing it away, we're hating it, okay, then we are suffering. So Kubler-Ross's Stages of Death and Dying, you know, she talks about how after a huge loss, someone is in that stage of resistance where they're, of course, very naturally saying, this is terrible, why did this happen, this is, okay? And then eventually people come to acceptance, might be years later, might be months later, might be many years. Once you reach here, you are not suffering so much. So part of the process of mindfulness is to start to see everything that happens as something that we can greet with acceptance, as a learning opportunity. And relationships are so like that, you know. I had a woman in my room about, it was a number of months ago now, and she was on her she'd just broken up from her 4th marriage. And she said to me, you know, why is the universe doing this to me? You know? And I said, well, first of all I said, you are getting better, because she'd picked better partners on the way, you know, she was learning, right? And I said, really, it's about turning that around and seeing what's the learning opportunity here. There must be a pattern that you have. Is it in the people that you're choosing? Is it in what you're doing in your relationships that you need to look at? And that's the opportunity. And once you can greet it with much more acceptance and welcome it and learn from it, then life starts to become much more enjoyable. You know, I can honestly say I live a very joyous life these days. And it's not that we haven't had, you know, that's my husband Dan there. and you know, we've had some challenges. I left general practice 6 years ago because I developed very severe insomnia. And I was, you know, my income was hugely important to our family at the time, and so it was quite a scary, challenging thing. But I eventually realised that general practice wasn't where my heart was anymore, okay? And so I moved, and I'm now working out of my son's old bedroom, and I'm doing mental health only, and I absolutely love it. And I'm teaching mindfulness to lots of people, or to small groups of people, but you know, I love what I do. I love it. So that huge loss of income for us, you know, and in fact for a few years we really lived on not a lot at all, okay, you know, was perfect. So it's turning things around, things that can seem like, you know, things that we should dread or hate as, okay, what is the opportunity of this? What am I here to learn? And difficult relationships, believe you me, they are gifts. Okay? They are there to teach you. Intimate relationships, absolutely they're there to teach you. You know? Once you get into relationships with anyone, might be friends, might be intimate partners, might be brother and sister, might be with dogs, okay, might be with whoever, that is an opportunity. And whatever you really, if there's something that really catches you about your partner, you know, really annoys you, you can guarantee that's a mirror for you. Okay? I'll explain that in a minute. But, so that's acceptance. So learning to treat life with acceptance. Okay? So, and the next thing is, and this is a huge thing, and is that we have to have the courage to face our issues. If we want to heal our relationships, we have to have the courage to face our issues, right? Very compassionately. So never with judgment, right? All our patterning has occurred from our childhood, it's occurred from our genetics, it's occurred from many and varied reasons, none of which has been under our conscious control, okay? So whatever issues we have, even if they're quite severe, okay, are never worth judging. It's not about judgment. It's just about seeing them and thinking, okay, I need to work on this. I can treat it with acceptance, but this is something I'm going to slowly address, okay? Never judging self. Loving self, actually, okay? So, the courage to face our issues, and to be honest, that is why it is challenging. That's why it's hard to get people to come to therapy and hard to get people to come to mindfulness classes, or is because, you know, there's an inconvenient truth in all of this. And it's that we do have to face stuff in ourselves that we don't really always want to see, okay? And part of meditation, that process, when we start to slow down, it's why we keep our lives so busy. Because when we start to slow down, it's like, uh-oh, what am I going to notice? Okay? Am I going to feel sad? Am I going to feel some fear? Am I going to feel uncertain about my work or my relationships? Okay? And that process I talked about of moving away from ego identity towards heart and soul is also a tricky one. The ego wants to kind of cling on, right? So this process isn't easy. It takes a bit of courage. But there's a woman called Pema Chodron, she's very wise, and she says, the most fundamental harm that we can do to ourselves is to not have the courage to face ourselves honestly and gently. And you know, the reason for that is the reason why that woman came to my room and said, I'm on my 4th relationship, I've just ruined my 4th relationship. Okay? And that's because she hadn't previously had the courage to stop and see what's going on here. So when we don't have the courage, life patterns just keep happening. And it's much more suffering. Okay, it's much harder for life to keep treating you like that than it is to actually stop and face it, as long as you learn to do it with loving acceptance, not to judge yourself. Okay? So it's good that you're all here, being courageous. Sorry? Yeah. So, let's talk about some common issues, okay? So some of the things that, and I talked about fear earlier, and most of us don't see that we have fear, okay? Most of us, so one of the more common issues that I would see is in any relationship, particularly in intimate relationships, but in fact all relationships, is that we do want to be loved and we fear rejection, okay? We want to be accepted, right? And in that process, a number of things can happen. So we can turn into what I call people pleasers. So in the world, we will tend to say yes all the time. We will tend to do things that may not be wholesome for our body. With our partners, we may not stand up for our core needs because we don't want to face disapproval or conflict, okay? We may walk on eggshells around people because we don't want to disappoint them. We don't want them to be angry at us. And in that process of people pleasing, where we're becoming who we think the world will like, do you think that's wholesome for our soul? No. In fact, there is no greater cause of depression and anxiety, really, than that. And we all do it to some extent. Okay, we are slaves to approval.